Hello and welcome to this instructional video on plot archetypical strategies. So some patterns in dramatic situations are so common that they are considered archetypes, or a very typical example of a certain person or thing. And these archetypes create certain expectations for how the dramatic situations will progress and be resolved over the course of a story. So let's get into it. Archetypes refer to commonly used examples in literature. Archetypes are used intentionally, and some include recurring symbols, characters with certain character traits, and themes. Even settings. These archetypes are universal and timeless patterns that tap into shared human experiences, emotions, and cultural symbols. Archetypal strategies enhance the richness and the universality of storytelling, providing a familiar framework for exploring fundamental aspects of the human condition. So let's start talking about each of these components, these different types of archetypes that you find in literature. So archetypical symbols are recurring and universally recognized images, patterns, or motifs that carry a shared meaning across various cultures and times. These symbols tap into collective human experiences and emotions, often representing fundamental concepts such as life, death, love, and transformation. Archetypal, you can tell that I struggle with this word, but archetypal symbols are deeply ingrained in the human psyche, and they evoke a sense of resonance and familiarity in literature, mythology, and art. Let's talk about some examples of what archetypical symbols are like. So these include the hero, the journey, the mother, the serpent, the circle, each holding inherent meanings that transcend culture and historical boundaries. So let's talk about them one by one. The hero symbol represents the individual who embarks on a transformative journey or quest, facing challenges and overcoming adversity in order to achieve a significant goal. The hero's journey often involves self-discovery, growth, and the embodiment of noble qualities. The journey symbolizes the process of self-discovery, transformation, and the pursuit of knowledge or enlightenment. It reflects the universal human experience of embarking on a quest, both external and internal, in order to gain wisdom or face trials, and ultimately find a deeper understanding of oneself and the world. The mother archetype embodies nurturing, protection, and the life-giving force. It represents the source of unconditional love, guidance, and sustenance. The mother archetype can also be associated with fertility, creation, and the cyclical nature of life and death. The serpent is a complex archetype, representing transformation, renewal, and temptation. It is often associated with both positive and negative aspects. On one hand, the shedding of the serpent's skin symbolizes rejuvenation and growth, while on the other, the serpent's role in tempting figures in various myths symbolizes the challenges of choice and moral ambiguity. The serpent embodies the dual nature of life and the transformative journey. Finally, let's talk about the circle. The circle symbolizes wholeness, unity, and completeness. It represents the cyclical nature of life, eternity, and the interconnectedness of all things. The circle often signifies harmony, balance, and the unbroken cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. So these are just some common symbols that you will see in literature that you see over and over and over again. And so the fact that these recur in literature is what makes them archetypal symbols, So now let's talk a little bit about characters. Archetypical characters are timeless and familiar personas found in literature. They embody specific traits or roles that repeat across different stories. They're like universal character templates that represent common human experiences and themes, making stories relatable and resonant. So these characters, you see the same type of characters over and over and over again in literature. Archetypical characters are like the superheroes, wise mentors, or mischievous tricksters that we encounter in stories. They're familiar figures that show up again and again, bringing certain qualities or roles to life. Think of them as the building blocks of characters that make stories feel like stories that we've known forever. Now let's talk a little bit about how settings can be recurring. Recurring and universally recognized environments in literature that carry specific meanings and evoke certain emotions are archetypical settings. These settings often symbolize broader themes and contribute to the overall mood of a story. Some examples include the Enchanted Forest, a setting that represents the unknown, magic, and mystery. Characters who venture into an enchanted forest often face challenges, encounters with mythical beings, and personal transformations. The isolated island is another type of archetypical setting. The isolated island symbolizes seclusion, self-discovery, and the testing of characters' resilience. Stories that are set on isolated islands often explore themes of survival, human nature, and the impact of isolation. Often you also will see what's called the crossroads. The crossroads serve as a symbol of choice and decisions. Characters that reach a crossroad in their journey need to make critical decisions that will shape the course of their story. This setting highlights the theme of personal growth and decision making. So now we can get into talking about archetypical themes. Archetypical themes are recurring and universally understood concepts in literature that explore fundamental aspects of the human experience. These themes, often symbolized by specific situations or conflicts, connect stories across cultures and time periods, and resonate with readers on a deep and relatable level. So some examples of themes that you see recurring include the hero's journey, which follows a hero who embarks on an adventure, faces challenges, and undergoes personal growth. Some examples of the hero's journey include Harry Potter's journey to defeat Voldemort, or Frodo Baggins' quest to destroy the One Ring in Lord of the Rings. The quest for knowledge is another theme that we see over and over again, where characters are on a quest for some kind of knowledge, which symbolizes the human pursuit of wisdom and understanding. Frankenstein is a good example of this, where Victor Frankenstein's quest for scientific knowledge leads to profound consequences. The battle between good and evil is a third very common archetypal theme. This theme explores the fundamental conflict between opposing forces. In The Lord of the Rings, for example, the epic battle between the forces of good, represented by the Fellowship, and evil, Sauron's army, is a very classic example of the battle between good and evil. You can see this in pretty much everything you read. Now let's talk about 3 writing techniques. Well, really 4 writing techniques that are used. The first is called sudden exposition. Sudden exposition is used because, especially in short stories, because short stories work to stay short, so writers often skip the customary backstory and begin their story right in the middle of conflict. Stories, whether they're short stories, whether they're novels or whether they're dramas, any of them that start in the middle is what we called in media res. It means that we start in the middle of some kind of action. With sudden exposition, the reader gathers character information, setting details, and background information in the rising action rather than in an exposition in your typical plot format. Another writing technique that's used is the twist ending or irony. With the twist ending in short stories, this is a popular place for twist endings where the resolution differs drastically from what the reader would expect. A twist ending also showcases irony in that the reader is presented with a situation quite the opposite from what we would expect to happen at the end. Writers also used the technique of foreshadowing. So in some narrative structures, we interrupt the chronological points of a story, of the plot, in order to give hints about what is to come. So in some, we use, like I said, foreshadowing, and we also use what's called flashback or stream of conscious, as well as in media res, in order to really get you moving into that story. So foreshadowing is a prose device where authors make hints at plot events that are to come later in the story. And then in flashback, that's a story technique where authors take readers back in time to show events that happened before the current moment in a narrative. So these are all ways that authors use writing techniques in order to, and these techniques happen over and over and over again in order to drive that plot. As always, thank you for learning, going on this learning journey with me and learning about plot archetypical strategies with me. Now, as you read, you can start to pick up on these patterns and understand why they are important.